It's me, Chris Brogan. Hope you're doing well. How's every little thing? Felt like going live, doing a Facebook Live, a YouTube Live. I don't even know where I am. I felt like doing a YouTube Live. I was just thinking a lot. Anytime I get a chance to commute any distance, because I work at my house, so anytime I get to commute any distance, it affords me an opportunity to think. It lets me read stuff if I'm offline, like in an airplane, or sometimes, in this case, I was in my car for a while, so I caught up on a podcast that I had not listened to yet, and it was Conan O'Brien's podcast. I think it's called Conan O'Brien Needs New Friends or something, and it fits the bill of all my favorite podcasts not made by friends of mine, insofar as he's interviewing comics and kind of really getting underneath what they do. And I always find it interesting, just the same way I enjoy watching Jerry Seinfeld terrorize people and comedians in cars getting coffee. And I used to listen to Marc Maron. I thought that was great too. But one of the pieces that I love about it is it makes me think about my business, especially as a speaker, but also as a media person and as a communicator. It makes me think, are there ways that I can improve how I convey or communicate my message? The answer is always yes, right? Like the answer is always that there's ways to deliver what you do. But what becomes tricky is, I think a lot of time when we're looking at how we communicate with people and when we're looking at our messages and what's going on and what matters and what doesn't, I think one of the big challenges we run into is that we have to learn how to emulate other people. We have to sort of copy from someone or mimic someone before we start figuring out our own voice. But what if we're picking the wrong person, or what if we're copying the wrong aspect of what makes someone's delivery good or bad or whatever? So for instance, I listened to a bunch of these interviews, and I know that the way Adam Sandler thinks about his business is very different than how Pete Holmes thinks about his. I was listening to Dana Carvey in a recent interview with Conan O'Brien, and it was interesting because Dana has one thing that I definitely have, which is just a real worry, what if they don't like me, and that kind of like self-esteem challenge sort of thing. But I did not know that Dana Carvey was a very analytical person, and that he just like really, really digs into the numbers and the details, basically, of how he, how people react to his comedy or whatnot. So I found that interesting, but that's not me. So I was thinking about it even with sort of my friends and with the people that I connect with. And, for instance, Christopher Penn is a very data-driven, super smart guy. I find him very funny too. I think he's a great speaker, but he also can scare a room full of people with his information, because he's so the information is pretty intense sometimes. And I'm never going to scare a room full of people, but I'm not always going to educate them the way Penn will educate them either. So it becomes interesting. Can you practice being a better version of you? And what do you have to watch out for? What do you have to look out for when it comes to, keeping the parts of you that you need, learning from other people, but not sort of, being the clone of them, but sort of learning what you want to learn from their style or their ability? And then what parts, maybe do you not even know are out there? And then finally, how practiced should you be? So another difference between me and a lot of people is I really approach my professional speaking, and I really approach even things like media making like this as improv. And I try to have a very, solid sense of where I want to go, but I don't script it out. I don't practice it and whatnot. So a lot of professional speakers, they write their speech. They write one speech for a year or more, and they will only give that one speech. And that's always rankled me. I've always thought, that's a horrible way to do it. It's a horrible way for me to do it. But that person has the ability to practice delivering a message so that it really hits with the people that they're serving. And they can really practice the good and the bad of the message. They can really practice whether or not it makes sense to people. And I think that by not practicing my speeches, or by sort of bringing a new speech to every event, I run that problem of not knowing if it's going to hit every single time. And every single time, there's only that room full of people that's going to hear it that way. Do you know what I mean? So if I blow it, then that whole room full of people got nothing. And if I do it really well, then that room of people got something, and then the next room's going to get nothing because maybe I'll blow it. Oh, hey, Chloe. threw my phone on the ground. I like to do that every now and again, just throw my phone on the ground to test whether or not this will be the time that I break it. So anyway, can you practice being a better version of you? And some of the ways that I do it is I try really hard to affect better brevity. I try really hard to make concepts that I can repeat and make better sense and all that sort of a thing. I also try really hard to show the aspects and elements of business that I want to show. Hey, Monica, how the heck are you? One of them is being personable, right? So my advice is always the same in this sort of regards. Definitely learn from other people, but always make it your point to make the best execution. And I think that what Lynette's saying, and hello, Lynette, it has been far too long since I've seen you in person, but I'm thrilled to see you digitally. Lynette says, I think you can still stage improv a speech, but still practice your timing, storyline, stage work, and placement. You're totally right. Delivery, one of the things, so at the very beginning, before everyone showed up, I was saying, I'm listening to this new podcast, Conan O'Brien Needs New Friends, and it's doing this thing where he's interviewing a lot of comics about sort of their skill sets and all that. One of the things he said to Dana Carvey that I think he meant, and I think it's funny, is he said, I got a lot of my timing, my practice and skills on timing, he said, from Looney Tunes. And I loved that because I was like, I totally get that. I get how you could have picked up pacing from Looney Tunes and how you could translate that forward. He was also talking about how comedy has changed a great deal, partly because of things like podcasts, to be a lot more self-revealing and all that sort of a thing. And I think that that's a positive. But then they were talking about John Mulaney, who's one of my favorite comics, and they were saying that John Mulaney is a very out of time type of comedian because his method is very much like the old timey days. He would have been much better in the world of Johnny Carson and all that. Chloe says, having a concept you can repeat. I love that. Well, John Mulaney, and then I'll go back to that. So the thing that Mulaney said that I really, really, the thing about Mulaney is that he's honed it so that, what you're going to get is the best possible delivery of this message that you can get. And I love that. And I envy that. It's just not the way I tend to do it. So, back to what, Chloe had said about, a concept you can repeat. That's the one detail that I'm willing to take into consideration. That's the one thing I'm willing to look at a little bit bigger and try to accept, is that maybe what I could do, sorry, camera, maybe what I could do is I can, make sure that the 5 or 6 or 7 things I most need humans to know for now until I'm dead are always in there, that there's always kind of anchor islands I go to, and in a way that's like playing the hits. Like if you don't play Jesse's Girl, then you failed your audience. If you're Kiss and you don't play, Detroit Rock City, you failed the audience. I think we need to play the hits, right? And I think we can practice that. And I think we can make that, like what you're saying, Lynette and or Chloe, is you could definitely make it so that what we're putting out there, even though it can be new and unique feeling, has some beds in there, has some places. I don't know why I say beds, but I mean it like in podcasting, like when you lay down an audible bed, but it has that sort of, this is going to be solid and we know this is here so we can now go up. Does that make sense? So I think that's worth considering. My final point to make about all this though is that the other risk in trying to hone ourselves down to be a very specific thing is that either we'll do that based on some compliment we receive from somebody or a criticism that we're now trying to avoid. But if we don't stay flexible in defining and deciding who we are, then we're going to get stuck into a situation. Adam Sandler, Conan O'Brien was really praising Adam Sandler's newest thing on Netflix. And I can agree. It's so good. Adam said, yeah, I wrote that with the guy who plays piano in the special and this other guy, and he called them both kids, because Adam is, nearing 50 or is 50. I'm nearing 50. I'll be 49 this year. And he said, it's really, really important that, you work with people, and he said kids, to shake it up, to really get the concepts out there and to make them make a lot more sense. Chloe says the principles always remain, but I think it's the how is what changes. Yeah, no question. So I released my book, The Freak Shall Inherit the Earth, back in, I think, 2015. I'm so bad with time. I released the book, Freak Shall Inherit the Earth, whatever. And I am about to, I have the audio rights and I never did anything with it. I just sat on the audio. And so I'm going to release the audio, which means I have to record it. And I was thinking about, I wonder how this book will have changed in any way. And my answer is probably not very much, because I tend to write as evergreen as I humanly can. But I know that how I'm going to talk about it, to Chloe's point, is I am definitely going to talk about it in a very different way. Hey, Raul, good to see you. There we go. We have a token mail now. But yeah, I think that in the process, though, I think as we sort of try to figure out how we're going to convey the message and all that, I think the big win is coming. And I think that there's a very big opportunity to practice that. So that's my thoughts. My thoughts are, you can practice being who you are, but you have to really stay cautious, that you're not, kind of caricaturing yourself, and that, there has to be some sense of something solid, but then you could still maintain both everything. So that's that. One last word from Chloe, and then we're going to get the heck out of here, because I think 10 minutes is plenty fine, and we're at 11. Ooh, O.M. Lemon Squeezy. I'm so excited for the audio of that book. Thank you. I'm very motivated because I just finished David Goggins' Can't Hurt Me. David Goggins released his own book. He's a former Navy SEAL, which is like the least of his story. He's also an ultra marathon runner. His book Can't Hurt Me, he wrote it himself with a not really a ghostwriter, but with a collaborator, and then released the book to Amazon, and it became a massive bestseller. And he released the audiobook, and the audiobook is like an audiobook / podcast / weird experiment. And I was like, that really motivates me to want to do the Freaks. So I'm going to start speaking into this bad boy and doing that. Anyway, look, thank you for coming by. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much. And I'll talk to you really soon. Drop me a line anytime, Chris@chrisbrogan.com.